Hey, Lake Point, Pastor Michael here to get you caught up on the 5th week of our series, Bless. A series focused around relational evangelism. A series where we're looking at 5 everyday ways to love your neighbor and change the world. And so the big idea that was looked at this week in the order to bless people was that Jesus actually invites us to share our story. The reality is you won't likely help anyone discover the love of God without using your story. The Apostle Paul writes to the church in Rome in chapter 10, he says, "For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved, but how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they've never even heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? This is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of the messenger who brings good news." People need to hear the good news about Jesus Christ if they are to put their trust and confidence in him. But for many of us, there is a reluctancy to do so. For some of us, it's because maybe we're shy. Sharing our story makes us feel uncomfortable. We'd rather kind of blend in rather than stand out. For others of us, it's because we don't want to impose our beliefs on other people. We don't want to come across as, pushy or religious. And for others, though, it's because we don't feel ready. We're still in process. Our story is still being formed. Or maybe we just wouldn't know how to respond if a debate broke out. Like, what if they asked us a question that we didn't have an answer for? However, although we use those excuses, did you know that according to Gallup polls, 87% of Americans say they actually believe in God? I mean, that's almost 9 out of every 10 people. It doesn't mean that they're religious or they go to a church or have a relationship with Jesus. Most probably don't. The point is simply that most people around you already believe in God and they just need someone that they trust to help them find their way to that one true God. What's more is that 26% of Americans say they are curious about Christianity and what it could mean for their lives. And then the kicker on that is that 79% of unchurched people agreed with the statement that I don't mind talking to a friend about faith if they really value it. In fact, an eye-opening kind of study that the Barna Group did is they asked people what they valued in a person and whom they would want to talk about spiritual matters with. And so these are the top 3 qualities in order. First, people are looking for someone who is willing to listen without judgment. Second, they want someone who would allow them to draw their own conclusions. And third, they want to have somebody that would have confidence in sharing their own perspective. Basically, as Nate shared, if you want to summarize this research into one word, what people are saying they are looking for is people are looking for a friend. And all of us can be that to the people God has placed in our lives. We can be friends. There's a story located in John chapter 9 that helps provide us with a framework for sharing your story. It reads this, John chapter 9 verse 1. It says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been born blind from birth. And Jesus comes across this man. He does a very strange thing. He spits on the ground, makes a mud from the spit, and he spreads the mud over the blind beggar's eyes. Jesus then tells the man to go wash out his eyes in a nearby pool. And then this is what happens next. In verse 7, it says, the man went and washed, and he came back seeing. It's amazing, right? Blind since birth, but now the man can see. And when his neighbors asked him what happened, this is his response in verse 11. The man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. And so I went and I washed, and now I can see. Notice that this man can't fully explain how it happened, and I'm guessing he was a little hesitant to share about the spitting part. And so he simply tells them what Jesus did and how his life is now forever changed. In fact, later when the man is asked again about what had happened, he simply says, I was blind and now I can see. As Nate pointed out, the story of the blind man gives us a great outline for sharing our own story. Part 1, my life before Jesus. Part 2, how I met Jesus. And part 3, how my life is after meeting Jesus. The blind man said, I was blind. This is who he was before meeting Jesus. He put mud on my eyes. The man explains his first encounter with Jesus. Now I see. That's how this man explains the difference Jesus has made in his life. And so part 1 for your story, it's the before. Like, what was life like before you met Jesus? Or if you grew up in church knowing all about Jesus, what was your life like before you got serious about following him? The second part of your story is the how. How did you become a Christ follower? How did you go through a particular tough time in your life that led you to God? Did a friend invite you to a church service? Did a family member introduce you to Jesus in some way? And the third part of your story is the after. Like, what difference has following Jesus made in your life? How has knowing him impacted how you walk through both the good and the hard times in life? The Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 5:17 writes that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone and a new life has begun. And so what does that new life look like? How has your story changed because of it? Well, when you hear Christians share their stories, there's 5 themes that run kind of persistently throughout. Christians often talk about peace. You might hear people say things like, Christ has given my life peace. I'm at peace with God. Christ has helped me to stay calm even in chaos. Another common story element for someone that's come to follow Jesus is that they talk about how they now have freedom, that Christ has given me a clear conscience. He set me free from bondage and addiction or guilt and shame. Another is love. Christ has shown me true acceptance. He has given me a loving community to belong to. My life knows love and acceptance. Another one is hope, that Christ has allowed me to approach life with optimism and confidence. My life knows hope both for the future now and for eternity. And finally, the other most kind of common theme as a result of following Jesus is that part of our after story is purpose. People express how they now feel they have a life mission. They have a renewed sense of purpose. Their life knows meaning and fulfillment. Well, friends, consider yourselves caught up. Ask God to give you opportunities to share your story and the courage to seize the opportunities He has already provided for you. Enjoy working through the discussion questions, and remember, you're blessed to be a blessing.